There's a woman who comes to our parish. Her name is Marjalyn. Marjalyn is homeless. And if sometimes she's able to find a place to stay, it never lasts long. She's never able to find stability. There's some thrust in her, which makes it impossible to remain stable. Generous people from the parish have tried to help her find a place, to help her find some stability, but it never lasts long. Marjalyn is a hermaphrodite. Her appearance is confusing as she straddles the limits of what we understand, straddles the limits of the normal categories that constitute the world. Marjalyn is paranoid, and possibly more. When you speak with her, she jumps from one thing to the next, one subject to the next. Her conversation is disjointed and fragmented. To speak with her is to feel like she's constantly under attack. Marjalyn comes and sits in the narthex, and she usually stays there for the whole service. And very rarely she gets up and she walks into the nave and she sits down in the nave. But she always stays just for a few minutes, and then she returns to the narthex. We've invited her to come in. Our priest has spoken to her, asked her if she wanted to be catechized, if she wanted to join into full communion, but Marjalyn returns to the narthex. She waits until coffee hour. She eats with us and hopes that someone will give her some money before she leaves. Marjalyn has memorized the services. Sometimes she makes little comments about some detail, some small error or confusion in the service. Maybe the choir was off a little bit, or maybe someone forgot some small detail. And she knows what's happening in the parish, the politics and the jostling which sometimes takes place in human affairs. And we hear strands of that. We hear these hyper-lucid comments. They appear as surprises in her usual frenetic conversation. One Sunday, Marjalyn reached into her backpack. She carries this backpack around with her. And she reached into her backpack and she took out these 3 small McDonald's toys. The kind of toy you get if you buy a Happy Meal. And she took these 3 toys and she gave them to my children. There's a tradition in Indian culture according to which to receive a gift from a beggar is to receive a blessing from God. There are those who whisper in the parish, I don't know who, but there's someone who's whispering in the parish that maybe Marjalyn is an angel. Once in speaking to her, she told me that she also attends a mosque, that there is a Muslim couple who will often pick her up on Friday so that she can participate in the prayer. So I would ask all of you, in that last sentence that I just added to that story, all of us to examine what our hearts did when I added that last part. There are some of us here who might be too happy that I mentioned the detail about the mosque, and there are some here who might be too annoyed that I mentioned that detail. But Marjalyn just sits in the narthex after all. There's something about the margin which always arises our passions. And so I hope that I brought all of you to a place that you're struggling to deal with. the threat of zombies, the abundance of monsters, St. Christopher, dog-headed men, people who don't fit into categories. If you feel uneasy and a bit conflicted and confused that I was able to move from zombies to angel in one fell swoop, I'm sorry. I have to apologize. That was really the point of my talk. That's what fragmenting looks like. That's what a fragmented age looked like, the moment when order is not easy to inhabit because the world is filled with exceptions.